We could start with roll call.
Chair Sanders,
Here.
Vice Chair Hibbard. Committee members Perez Andreessen. Committee member Holt.
Here.
Member Keller.
Here, and I apologize. I have a hard stop at 1:45 today, so I won't be rude as I get up and leave. I'll apologize in advance.
Committee member Louie.
Here.
Committee member Prince. Committee member Roland.
Here.
And committee member Tobias.
Here.
Thank you. I do know that Mr. Hibbard will be joining us. I'm not 100% about Mr. Prince. Are either of them online?
I don't see them.
Okay, well, we still have a quorum. I don't think we're voting on anything today anyway. Before we start, if nobody minds, I'd like to just start us off in a word of prayer, if you'll please join me. Dear God, we just come to you this hour, Lord, asking for your wisdom and your grace upon everybody in this room and those watching online. Guide our conversations and keep our hearts set on what is best for the city of Bakersfield. We thank you for everybody's time today and ask your blessings on this day going forward as we lead closer to our budget. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Thank you for that. I just wanted to set the tone for this meeting in good graces. With that, we'll go ahead and open our public comment. We do have a lot, and I appreciate everybody coming for the public comment. We will go ahead and start with Mr. Lane. I will have from my phone. Can we just note that Mr. Hibbard has joined us?
Yes.
Barry, do you want to sit right here so Fred can sit there? I will have on my phone the 2 minutes, and I'm going to be pretty strict on that only because of the time frame that we have today. I do have a hard stop today at 1 for myself. Mr. Hibbard, if you wouldn't mind, if we do seem like we're going over, are you able to take over?
I am.
Okay. In that event, Mr. Hibbard will take over as chair. Mr. Lane, please.
Last couple of years, what we've seen happen on the Kern River is really a devastation. We have here in the measure in wording that we're to reduce homelessness. Well, I've sent pictures out, and I would invite members of the committee to come with me and Bill Cooper, head of the Parkway Foundation. We took a walk there a few weeks ago. Unattended fires, clear evidence of drug abuse and sales, trash all along in there. We're talking about between Manor Street and Golden State Bridge, that area in there. It is just devastated. The habitat has been destroyed. It's not a public resource anymore. The public needs access to that resource. It should be a precious resource like it was 20 years ago. And I used to take boys down there. So what we're asking for is that there be a serious effort, short-term and long-term. Mr. Budak came down to San Miguel Grove with us, and not in the parking lot, but you go right to the river itself. Among other things, there are barking dogs that chase you away. So that issue needs to be addressed. And when we look at the recommendations now, there's not $1 for uplands of the Kern. We've given out pictures again and again. So there's no recommendations for there. Second issue is the issue of urban core parks. And in the letter the Sierra Club sent, we listed the ones for which there are no dollars planned to be expended, and none have been expended. Central at Mill Creek, Centennial, Crowell, Lowell, Plans, Saunders, Uplands of the Kern, I mentioned, and Wheel Parks. Take a drive, take a look at Plans Park. This is a neighborhood park. Thank you for your time.
Up is Mr. Spinner. Yes. Sorry, I can't read your writing on your first name.
Hi, everyone. Josh Center. Good morning. So I am here representing People's Budget, Bakersfield. I just wanted to come here and push back against the fact that there's going to be an additional $10 million going to more police spending. I think People's Budget has been speaking to a lot of people throughout the community, thousands of people actually, and this is not what they want. We keep trying to solve the same problems that we have of crime, of property, like with the same things. And I'm sure that the guy with the Frisbee will come up here and tell you how much he wants you to fund the police. But the truth is that, like, we've tried this, we've been down this road before, we keep investing, our city's gonna grow, and then everything else that everybody else wants is going to be at the expense and sort of sacrifice on the altar of the police, which, yeah, sure. Do we need them? Maybe now, but we need to start thinking more creatively about how we're solving the issues that our city has, especially as more and more people start to come here. Our city, like it's not lost on us that we're having this conversation as 2 lawsuits have just started to come down. Right? Bakersfield City is in the midst of figuring out where we as a public are in the midst of figuring out whether Bakersfield City is going to get sued by the Department of Justice for years of investigation. We need to start thinking more creatively about how we're trying to solve these problems, because the truth is we are trying to solve the problems, right? We just keep thinking that everything is a nail and the police is the hammer that's going to solve this issue. That has been proven and disproven time and time and time again. People need housing. People need parks. People need opportunities. People don't need cops patrolling them. And don't get me wrong, I know that y'all aren't the Bakersfield City Council. So all that I'm here saying is, like, let's try something new. Y'all are intelligent people here. Let's see that. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Patel, you're next.
Hi, echoing what Josh said already, I'm also speaking in support of People's Budget Bakersfield to defund the Bakersfield Police Department. And I find it really ironic that you guys started with an invocation, because while I was raised Hindu, I went to a Catholic Jesuit university, and I would know for a fact that Jesus and God himself would be disgusted with every single one of you, because he himself sided with the poor, the immigrants, the marginalized, while you guys don't do any of that. Also, furthermore, we have been very clear about a participatory budgeting process. It's not that difficult. You Google it, the first thing that comes up will show you how to do it. You guys should be telling Christian Clegg that we will not let anything pass unless you give the city a participatory budgeting process, which the city overwhelmingly approves. If you tell the city that, hey, we are giving you the opportunity to tell us where your taxpayer money goes, they would 100% agree with it, but you all have failed this city time and time again. Furthermore, as ignorant as all of you usually are about abolition, abolition is not about abolition as the end of things. Abolition is about abolishing the conditions under which prison became the solution to problems rather than the abolishment of buildings that we call prisons. And as an environmental justice organizer, I share Eddie Lane's concern for the environment. But I also understand that those people, through no fault of their own, are unhoused. That's on us as a community as a failure. The poverty system that is rampant in Bakersfield is a failure of Christian Clegg, the mayor, Karen Go, which is sitting there, that doesn't do fucking shit for the city. And all of you guys should actually be asking the city manager that we need a participatory budgeting process instead of shitting the bed like you guys are.
Mrs. Patel, keeping it under 2 minutes. Next time I ask for anything from you, I hope that you would come up to the board without using any foul language.
Fuck that, I don't care, I'm 25 years old. Deal with it, I fucking curse.
All right. Dalton Jones.
Hello. Hi, my name is Dalton Jones. I'm with the People's Budget Bakersfield. And I'm here to talk about participatory budgeting. Can you all hear me? Yeah, okay, cool, cool, cool. So I've heard everyone here talk about participatory budgeting, but in a way that is very like, I don't know if surface level is the word, but it doesn't hit it. People's Budget Bakersfield, as well as so many other organizations, have done the work for you in terms of actually putting together 6 asks that the community has literally thousands of community members have came in and said, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. Cops are on is nothing on that list at all. But for people who are privileged, mostly white people, people who wear whiteness, cops are amazing for you. Cops are amazing for people not like me, who get pulled over, and they don't have to worry about if their life is going to be taken by a Bakersfield police officer. Like in January, when the cops decided they were going to threaten me with a gun for a traffic stop and a violation that was some bullshit that I didn't do, and they couldn't even tell me what a crime was. They couldn't even tell me what crime I committed, but they thought it good enough that, how about I threaten you with a gun as well as search your car? Both of those things are illegal, and you want to give these people $10 million? The same people that beat Tatiana Hargrove because it was mistaken identity, the same people who killed Francisco Serna, and the same cop that's still working for that same police department, you want to give $10 million to? Meanwhile, thousands of community members have spent our time doing your job, creating a participatory budgeting process that has been in your email multiple times, your email multiple times, and your email multiple times. The People's Budget Bakersfield has done the work for you. Listen to us. The shit you're doing is whack, and you know it's whack, and you know it's gonna kill more people. You might not be the city council, but you are a decision maker. So the people that die, it's your fault.
Mr. Hightower?
Excuse me, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, city staff. My name is Troy Hightower. I'm a local consultant, and I have a few comments I'd like to make. First of all, in the minutes, we did not see any of the comments that the committee members made at the last meeting in the minutes. The second thing, and more importantly, I wanted to bring up is public pedestrian safety, which I believe is part of public safety. And there was a report done called Dangerous by Design. And there was a news broadcast by 17 on In Depth on Saturday, the 27th. And they interviewed someone representing that report, as well as Aaron Akimi from Kern and Bob Smith from City Council, and Caltrans' Diana Gomez. And in that study, they determined that Bakersfield is #2 in the nation on pedestrian deaths. And so I think, and I haven't seen so far in measuring whether there's money or concern about pedestrian safety. We did submit a proposal as part of the TCC program with the city. It's a corridor along 4th Street that goes from Chester and 4th along 4th Street to East of Union to South King. And what we were recommending is, of course, fixing the sidewalks and the streets, but adding what's called continental style. This is from the report, continental style crosswalks at Union and 4th. And in that study, they mentioned Union Avenue specifically as a problem. We also, in the proposal we put forth, we asked for similar crosswalkings at the schools at Lowell Park. And I was happy that I got a chance to briefly discuss this with, I'll just have one more. I have a question about the B3K $1.7 million budget. I'm not sure if that's that planning or some projects that they have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. Mr. Bingham?
To the board. To the board, Curtis James Bingham, senior servant of our Lord and Savior, God Almighty Jesus Christ. And I'd just like to say the Lord put you guys in leadership. And the Lord, just like you know, when he give you leadership on earth, he's planning for you to have leadership when he call you home to heaven. So the Lord tell us to bless our leaders. So I'd like to bless you with that. I'd like to also say, when you look at things, sometimes people don't see things correctly. I'm gonna go back where it started. I had Mark Zuckerberg, I had Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey asking for $120 million certified. Did they say anything back to me? No. Did they call our local law enforcement or anything? No. But we tried. But God Almighty himself seen fit to bless them with 1% measure in factor. Because when you look at our scriptures, Romans chapter 13, the Lord has in there the ministers, law enforcement are his ministers. And the biggest problem you're seeing today with them out there is people resisting them. But see, the public don't see that. Almost every time they go on something, start watching on TV, they usually always start with somebody resisting them. Once you resist, you change the game. They don't know which way you're coming from. But start paying attention to that and you'll see what the Lord is saying. And so what I'm saying is when you look at law enforcement, 100 officers to take care 100 would be fine. 200 to take care of 100 people would be fine. People want safety. Everybody's scared at nighttime. The more officers we get out there, the more safer we can get. If we can get one-on-one, we all will be safe. Everybody in here know we want some safety and they're scared out there. Crack, cocaine, marijuana, heroin, it's all a misdemeanor now because they're doing it so much, the courts don't want to deal with it no more. So they putting them all out there and you got crime running rampant. And the Lord says it's going to get worse and worse. It ain't going to get any better. We can't do nothing without law enforcement. See, we can't do nothing without, you can't open nothing up. As soon as we want to decide to get away from that, then the people coming right back here complaining. And I'd just like to say this, city council, a great city council board, we had to vote. We're going to make a vote because the people was crying, talking about we scared and the officers ain't getting here fast enough. So we voted, they gave them money. We got the money in 1% factor to keep things going in a positive way. Law enforcement is the reason why we got the 1%. People don't want to see that, but they responsible for us getting the 1%. They voted, spent $150,000 out there protecting the area real quick to see how it was, see what the problem was. So the city council said, let's vote for the 1%. We voted for it, we got it. They the ones responsible for the money, and a lot of these groups were nowhere around. But see, now we get money and everybody want to come out talking some crap. Well, guess what? We got law enforcement truly to be thankful for. Without the police, the fire, and the district attorney, we can't make it. And I'm sorry my time got short. I thought I was going to have longer than that, but in the name of God Almighty, Jesus Christ, pray God bless you guys, bless our law enforcement, but don't ever think of taking a penny away from them because the Lord said it's going to get worse and worse. They ain't responsible for the crime.
Thank you.
It's the crime that's out there. They keep coming to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Amanda DeShooter.
Hi, thank you. I'm here also along with People's Budget BACO, and I would like to use my time to urge the committee to divest funding from the Bakersfield Police and instead invest in alternative forms of community safety. As people have asked before in this public comment section, we need funding for city parks, for housing, and for so many other ways that keep our community safe. In particular, I don't understand why the city wants to allocate funding for police and code enforcement to quote unquote clean up homeless encampments and displace them without adequately funding housing and support services for those people to go to. I also encourage the committee to adopt a participatory budgeting process that actually listens to the community, to the community members who are marginalized and significantly impacted and abused by the police. Surveillance and police patrolling does not address the root causes of crime in our communities. Investing in these communities to provide opportunity, growth, and relief for marginalized communities does. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Turnipseed. Mike, we see that you have 3 public comment slips. Does that mean you want to talk for 6 minutes?
As they go along. Figure I get 2 minutes for each one. That's why I gave 3.
You're going to set a
5,
precedent.
I guess, but I was really trying to be.
We'll do 2
thoughtful.
minutes.
Madam Chair, I'm Michael Turnipseed. I represent the Kern County Taxpayers Association. We're entering year 3 of Measure N, and yet nothing ever changes. I've tried to ask every year for accounting outcomes of how our money's being spent, and all I get sent is like a 6-paragraph memo from Brown Armstrong that they checked all the boxes and they did some tests, and there were 40 deposits where it's supposed to be and 40 expenditures were made, and that was your audit. That is not an audit. That is not telling the taxpayers how the money was spent, where it was spent, and what actually. If you look at how they describe park improvements, what does that mean? Did we buy this? Did we buy that? Did we do this? Did we put a walking trail in? Those are the kind of things that I think people really want to know. So there were no performance reports. Back in early January, I think February when we met, there were going to be workshops. Here we are talking about expenditures. No workshops, no public workshops. And I see their capital improvement things that we've not even talked about or making the capital improvement list, and things that we've been talking about for 3 years, not to be seen. And I also wonder, while Measure N's pot of money is growing, that means the general fund's pot of money is growing. Plus, they're going to get $98 million of CARES money, plus whatever else they get through infrastructure. And I don't think Measure N money should be used for anything that those money should be used for. This was for extra things. This was to make the community better and address needs. And now things after years, we're going to landscape our highways and interchanges while things are still desolate. And one more final thing. I did a road trip around East Bakersfield on the 26th of March. I went by the Lowell Park. It was kind of clean and nice. I got to MLK. It was a disaster. Graffiti, everything under the sun. So I called the mayor. The mayor met me on Palm Sunday. We walked it. We talked to the homeless people. She passed out her waters and cookies like she always does. And of the 10 homeless people, I think she placed 4 in a shelter. Called and got that done. So I went back on Wednesday after Palm Sunday, then been done. Went there Thursday. Well, the Army was called out by then. They had 4 trucks. One was a extended cab. The other 3 pickups were just regular Parks pickups. They were just pickups without utility boxes. But they had an Army. They cleaned everything up. But the graffiti that was there on a second spot is still there. It's been there a week. So at least they can do is call the graffiti people and say, hey, you got graffiti on the building, come do it. And since I have 2 more times to talk, I'll talk to you then. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last public comment, Dr. Jones.
Good morning. I am the pastor at the People's Missionary Baptist Church at 1451 Madison. And that's the intersection of Madison and Casa Loma. My purpose for being here this morning is to actually to talk a little bit about some of the Measure N money. I was thinking this morning that when you think about Southwest Bakersfield and Measure N, the N stands for nothing. There's not been a lot done. I was talking to my wife this morning. We talked about when you drive from our house in Southwest to where the church is in Southeast, the only thing new we see is solar panels that have been erected down the street from the church. So I know that there's money that's available. I'm asking that you would make some commitment to Southeast Bakersfield specifically for some things that we need. One of the reasons kids are going to our gangs is there's nothing else for them to do. That's their only outlet once they get out of athletics or school. And so we need some things that are going to make a difference in that Southeast community. That's my purpose for being here. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. With that being our last public comment, we'll go ahead and go over the minutes. I also did not see, as Mr. Hightower mentioned, there was no note of the conversations that the committee members left after the last meeting.
We generally produce action-only minutes unless there is specific comments related to the items that are voted on. We do not normally include those in the minutes.
Thank you.
If I may, Chair, as well, I would just follow up and say that that is accurate. We do action minutes. However, as we did last year, we plan as votes are taken on these items at our next meeting. If there are comments or in particular feedback from those that voted and not in favor of an item, those have been produced in a separate memo for the city council. So they get that feedback, but it's just not part of the public record.
All right. Thank you for that. Yep.
Motion to adopt the minutes from the March 25th, 2021 Oversight Committee meeting.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Madam Chair, I'll second.
Do a vote.
Can you repeat who was the first to motion?
Mr. Louis was the first. Mr. Keller was the second.
Chair Sanders,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hibbard,
Yes.
Committee Members Perez Andreessen, Committee Member Holt,
Aye.
Committee Member Keller,
Aye.
Committee Member Louis,
Aye.
Committee Member Prince,
Yes.
Committee Member Rowland,
Yes.
and Committee Member Tobias. Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. And just before we get started with the presentations, I just wanted to remind everybody in the audience, this committee is here to have oversight over the measure and funds, but not to be the last vote of the way these dollars are spent. We do the best that we can to review the material that's provided. Many of the public comments, I know as for myself, I do sympathize and agree with many of you. But it is our job up here to make sure that anything that is presented to us falls within the 13 criteria that the measure was voted for. With that, I will say that we do a very good job of recommending to the city council our side notes. Each of us have the opportunity after every budget item is voted on to leave comment, whether we were in support or in opposition. That is where I think we provide the most value as a committee. Is to review in detail everything that's presented line item by line item, but it is in the end left up to our city council. So we do appreciate everybody's public comments, even those that are a little harsher than others. With that said, keep that in mind. Your public comments are, I wouldn't say more valuable, but they're noted highly with the city council. So thank you. With that, we'll hand it off.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Just as a reminder, we have split the proposals into two separate segments. Today, we'll be talking about police, fire, public works, and some of the strategic miscellaneous items. And our next session will get into issues such as parks and economic and community development and some of the other proposals from other departments. So we heard a comment today that ranged across topics that will be covered at our next meeting as well as today. With that, we have a PowerPoint presentation for our department heads to walk through with the committee. We'll walk through each of those. We are providing some feedback on what we have done with the PSVS funds over the last 2 years, some status updates similar to those that we provide to the city council on a quarterly basis. As we review the city council goals, we update them on all the things that we've done related to Measure N as well as other city initiatives. But today we'll have some pieces of that for you, reporting back on things that have been done this last year, and then the proposals from the departments. And we will begin with our police department. So we'll ask Chief Terry to come up and give a presentation.
Because I'm standing close enough. Oh, thank you. All right. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Greg Terry, Police Chief, and I will be presenting our proposal for Phase 3 of the Public Safety and Vital Services measure. Before I get into the actual proposal, the first couple of slides will be a review of some crime stats, as well as an update on some of the items related to the police department as they have been funded through the measure. We have worked to ensure that our proposal complies with the objectives and the goals of Measure N, as well as working to ensure that we are having the resources to meet our community's needs as well. The first slide is a look at crime, an update on crime. This slide reflects 2020 stats as compared to 2019. It's our report, it's our Part 1 crimes that are reported to the federal government that make up both violent crime and property crime. The graph all the way to the left is a summary or is a total of the total Part 1 crimes, both violent crime and property crime. And the two to the side are separated by violent and property. You'll notice that there was a decrease in total Part 1 crimes for 2020 versus 2019. There was an overall, like I said, as an overall decrease in Part 1 crimes, there was also decreases in elements of the violent crime. However, we saw significant increases in our homicides, in particular aggravated assaults, and those are weapons-related assaults. In fact, we had a record number of our community members murdered last year in this city at 45. And we had a large number of aggravated assaults, which are, like I said, weapon-related charges or weapon-related incidents. We're not alone in this unfortunate trend. 63 of the top 66 cities in the United States saw similar trends last year, with homicide rates increasing by about 30%. So we were consistent with that. But again, these are unacceptable levels of violence that have occurred in our city. There was an overall decrease in property crime as well, specifically in burglary and theft, but there was significant increases in auto theft. Next, this slide is an update on personnel and staffing. Since the beginning of the measure a year and a half ago, the total number of positions both reflects what's authorized and what has been filled. On the police officers, our current complement is 479. We have 431 of those positions filled. That 431 accounts for 29 that are currently in the police academy. We have had 3 police academies since the beginning of the measure, with our 4th one to begin here in July. We have a total of 55 graduated from the previous 3 academies. And as I said, we have 29 in the current academy that will graduate in June. And we are planning for another 46 to be in July's academy, with another January and next July academies being planned as well. We've also been hiring some laterals. On May 3rd, we have 6 laterals, our academy graduates starting, and we are continuing to pursue those options as well to fill these important staffing positions. In particular, on the police officer side, we have made and worked significantly with human resources to streamline our processes and more aggressively engage our candidates through the hiring process. And some of the changes that have been made in the last 6 months or so in particular, I'm very confident that we're going to be able to see some significant increases this year in our ability to staff these positions. The rest of the positions there are mostly support staff, some specialized positions within the police department. It shows what is authorized and what is currently filled as of today. ShotSpotter. ShotSpotter has been in place with the police department since 2018 when we did an initial pilot project, and that initial project was grant funded. And then in this current fiscal year, we expanded the ShotSpotter system. That map there reflects now the current coverage within the city at 6 square miles. That map is as of March of 2021 and indicates by the different colors the types of gunfire detection incidents that have occurred in that area. This coverage is of the areas of our cities that are unfortunately where most of the gunfire occurs.
You can see the total activations since the system has begun is 1,500. Those are the actual gunfire detection activations from ShotSpotter. And I make a note that there's been citizen reports of 282. So in other words, only 282 of those incidents were reported to us out of the 1,500. And part of this tale with ShotSpotter in particular, and why it's important to us, is because there is, unfortunately, a reality, and for those that live in these areas, that gunfire has become an everyday thing for them. They don't think it unusual, and that's unacceptable. Our reports, like I said, the detections that we have far outweigh our citizens reporting these types of incidents. I highlighted there below some incidents, some significant events that have occurred where police responded to this areas specifically because of ShotSpotter, and highlighted some of those incidents where there was no response as a result of a call from a community member, but simply ShotSpotter, and that resulted in 5 homicides, some aggravated assaults, and weapon firing incidents where, absent a ShotSpotter activation, we would not have known about these incidents in a timely manner. So we are committed to working with our community to address this issue. This is one of the elements that we're using to address gunfire. We have obtained another grant in working with community partners on a group violence reduction strategy to reduce gun and gang violence in our city, to reduce incarceration that becomes necessary from that, and really focusing resources on those that are most prone to be a victim of gun violence or to commit gun violence. And so this program is just getting underway, and it's going to be funded by a grant from the state for the next 3 years. But we are focusing a lot of resources in these areas to reduce gunfire in our city. Some other updates on response times. 2020, 54% of our priority 1 response times, we were able to get there in under 7 minutes. 2019, it was actually 57% of the time. Obviously, we're not satisfied with that. You can ask why, and we're asking why a lot, and yet we just don't have a hard answer for that yet. Certainly, we were, like the rest of the world, impacted by COVID and necessitated going into emergency staffing and changing some of our protocols and limiting some of the staffing in the field. We've also been very closely analyzing our deployment strategy, and I anticipate some changes coming when we have shift change in July to immediately and specifically to address our response times. The restoration of field responses to residential and commercial burglaries, that was enabled because of some positions that were funded through this measure, and allowing us to return police service technicians to the field. Prior to 2019, if you were the victim of a residential or commercial burglary, you had to file the report online or over the telephone. And if there was evidence to be obtained, we would send someone at a later date. With the restoration or with these new positions, particularly the police report specialists that work in our telephone reporting unit, and then some police property and equipment specialists, we've been able to move our PSTs, which is what their primary duties have been and intended for, back into the field. And we were able to restore in-person responses to our victims of residential and commercial burglaries in 2020. And during that calendar year, they had over 2,000 responses. Last, there is an update on Trans West and some of the prevention patrols that they're using. Some of their stats. The no BPD contact reports reflect the number of incidents that Trans West made reports of significant events, but did not require response from the police department. The BPD contact reports indicates that there was an incident where they reported to us and we had a response to that event. The city source reports by them are the reports that they made via the city app on trash pickup, debris pickup, human waste cleanup, that sort of thing. We continue to meet with them weekly on deployment strategies and figuring out where the most significant incidents are occurring and where their staff needs to be. With some mid-year adjustments, we are going to be expanding the Trans West coverage to nearly 24 hours a day. And so right now it's about 8 to 15 hours a day. I think it varies, but we will, with this new funding that was adjusted in the mid-year, we'll be able to expand that to almost 24 hours a day with particular coverage, heavier coverage at night in the early morning hours. They either handled it in that, well, a vandalism report, we would handle that report, it would be referred to us, but it was, if they encountered someone that would not move, they ended up handling it and removed them. They had medical, they summoned medical aid and police didn't need to respond. The person moved on, or they were able to resolve the issue in some other way. But that actually reflects the number of incidents that we did not go to. Pistol range retrofit. This is some overviews of it. The structure, the range itself has been there for many, many years. This retrofit was basically putting a lid on it, as you can see, the overview there, and then some photographs from inside the bays. This greatly enhances the safety of the officers and the community, surrounding community, when we are engaging in firearms training. Now I'll get to this year's proposal and the new positions. There are 28 new police officer positions being requested. These will be patrol officers primarily, the 9 police officers, 8 senior police officers. The senior police officers help provide line supervision within the patrol division, supplementing the sergeants. These detectives, additional detectives, will be assigned to the investigations division, where we are having to prioritize the case assignments based on the nature of the incidents that are occurring. And this will allow us to again begin investigating some property and financial crimes that are currently not being followed up on by a detective. And overall, it will just improve and enable us to improve our problem solving, collaboration with our community, and really diving into the root cause issues of many of these incidents and to find long-term solutions to them. The next several slides will be the new professional staff positions. The first couple are within the administration division, specifically the top 2 in the business office. As we have grown and regulatory changes have continued to occur, the complexity of the business and the scope of work within the business office continues to increase. This additional staffing will increase our capacity for internal audits, but it will also provide support for grant management and allow us to have the capacity to seek other grants as well. The second position there, or the bottom one on the administrative analyst within the quality assurance unit. The quality assurance unit supports the department by providing data and audits and inspections. Their mission really is a proactive look at the organization performance. And this position will allow us to compile a large volume of data and turn it into usable form so that we can see exactly how the department is functioning all the way down to the line level officer. The next professional staff positions are specialized positions, particularly the top 2 within the crime scene unit and the digital forensic unit. As we talked a little bit already, last year we saw significant increases in some of the violent crime, and this is directly tied to the crime scene unit who goes out and processes these crime scenes. Currently, because of the workload, we have had to have a police service technician removed from the field and placed into the unit and performing the duties of a lab tech. What we're requesting is then adding an additional laboratory technician to go into the crime scene unit to provide permanent stable staffing within the crime scene unit and allow us to return a police service technician to the field. The digital forensic unit, that is the unit that processes telephones and computers related to investigations. We're asking to add this position, which is a civilian position, which will replace a police sergeant who is currently working in the unit, and he will be returned to the field. The court complaint unit, those are 2 positions that are on a daily basis, compile the reports necessary for prosecutions to take place. Every morning they come in and file the hundreds and thousands of pages of documents and then take them and file them with the district attorney's office every day. Currently, these 2 positions are being filled by police service technicians. And with the addition of these 2 clerks, it will replace these police service technicians. One will be returned to the field, and then the other one will be reassigned within the investigations division to assist specifically with missing person cases. The professional staff position is the senior records clerk. At this time, there's no direct supervision by a professional staff member of the clerical staff within the investigations division. The clerical staff that is currently there are being supervised as a collateral duty by the sergeants who are in the investigations division. The addition of this clerk, the senior records clerk, they will provide direct oversight of the clerical staff, also act as a victim liaison, and we have many of our community members who are calling and asking for status updates and various types of information related to reports that they've filed. It will enable and provide a much better service level and response to our community, while also allowing the sworn detective supervisors to focus their direct supervision and management of their detective cases. The next positions are going into our support services division. The first one is a communications supervisor. Right now, we have 6 shifts of staff that works in the communications center, and there are 5 communications center supervisors. This will provide an additional supervisor to make sure that each shift is staffed with supervision constantly. The next positions are within the police records unit, and specifically, those positions will go to address the increasing number of Public Records Act requests that we are receiving. In 2019, we had about 13,000 public records requests. It increased by about 7 or 8% last year, and I anticipate that that will continue to increase. Factors in that have really been, obviously, we have more officers, so we are developing more records. The body cam program, which is a subject of a lot of the public records requests. But there's also been changes in legislation that mandate certain types of records within the police department now be released, and we need staff to constantly keep up with those, because those are mandated. Many of those have mandated time responses, and if we don't have the staffing to do it, it will be officers in there pulling these records. Just for your own perspective and orientation and awareness, a lot of our public records requests, like I said, are related to the body worn camera project. And for 1 hour of a body cam to be reviewed and redacted takes about 3 to 4 hours. The last position is a police property and equipment specialist in the technology and development unit. We're obviously always looking to develop and manage our technology. And right now this is being done by a police officer. With the addition of this position, that will transfer to a professional or civilian position, a stable civilian position, and that police officer will be returned to the field. The next set of positions are relatively new to us, certainly in this scope, and they are temporary positions, temporary retired annuitants. These are annuitants who have retired in the CalPERS system, who are eligible for us to bring back to work in a limited capacity or extra help capacity. These positions are at will, there's no benefits, and they're restricted to working 960 hours in a fiscal year. One of the reasons we are pursuing this is certainly try to supplement in a temporary basis our staffing shortages, and making sure that we can prioritize the work that's being done right now by sworn staff and identifying projects or short-term things that can be performed by these annuitants. The academy director and coordinator positions, we envision and are working to develop the concept of having retired annuitants come in and be the academy director. This academy director would work for the period of time the academy is in place, would be the contact with post, and oversee the curriculum and management of the academy under the direction of the captain, the permanent captain who is assigned to the training and logistics division. The academy coordinator is more in line with a sergeant rank, and that position would perform the day-to-day oversight of the academy itself in the administration of the curriculum and oversee the training that is being done. Both of those positions are currently being done as collateral duties with a lieutenant and a sergeant who are assigned to the training division. We want to bring back additional background. We want to bring back annuitants as background investigators. Last year, we investigated about 500 different types of backgrounds related to the police department and other city departments. We have about 35 certified background investigators within the police department. Most of those are sworn staff, and our sworn staff has been performing these background investigations as a collateral duty. Bringing back retired annuitants for the limited capacity or limited purpose of providing backgrounds for hiring. It would enable us to return a large portion of our background investigators that are doing now as a collateral duty and allow them to no longer have to do that, while we still at the same time move forward with the hiring process and get these background investigations done. The other two positions we're looking at are adding annuitants within the quality assurance unit to specifically perform audits and inspections throughout the organization. And then the last two would be related to traffic safety. And really working within the traffic unit, there are some administrative duties that are constant within the traffic unit that police service technicians and officers perform at various times, such as impound hearings, red flex, which is the red light ticket system, those kinds of administrative duties and reviews, handling and the organizing of special events. So we envision this is an opportunity for retired annuitants to come in and do these these assignments that aren't constant, and will allow, again, police service technicians that are assigned within traffic and our traffic officers to focus on speed enforcement and collisions. Requested new equipment for this next year are 30 patrol vehicles. And this again is just these are new vehicles to the fleet to ensure that we are maintaining our vehicle availability and deployment. As you know, like everything else in the world, we've been significantly impacted. COVID has significantly impacted that and the ability to get these vehicles in a timely manner. So there's some significant lead time. We're continuing with the restoration of our police motorcycle unit with the addition of 4 police motorcycles and then 1 police service technician truck. As I've said, we're returning or want to return several police service technicians to the field. An additional truck is needed for that. The last is just the last 2 slides are a summary of the budget broke down by positions. And then the very last one is a total summary of the requested positions and equipment.
Thank you, Chief Terry. I just have a question, and forgive my ignorance, but I think one of the things that I hear, at least from the public, in regards to Measure N in the police department and homelessness, those are the 3 that I hear the most about. It isn't so much beautification or streetlights. Can you just explain to me the way Mr. Lane had said about the uplands area on the bike path? Now, I've seen it firsthand as well. You know, drug dealing. I see little syringes on the bike path. Clearly, there is some individuals up to no good there. Why do I never see police on the bike path anywhere, specifically in that dense area where there's a lot of crime?
I understand the question and I understand the frustration, and I see it myself as I drive across the city. We are doing things and we are patrolling out there at various times. Traffic unit in particular does patrols along the bike path. We have our impact unit that focuses on several areas within the city where there's significant activity such as what you're describing. We are dealing with a staffing issue as well. That is a reality as well. We have limitations with what we can do with regard to homeless type incidents and whether they are of a criminal nature or not. There were for a long time, a lack of resources. Now that has been resolved somewhat with the shelters that have been built, particularly the navigation center. Our impact unit works very closely with a lot of our street outreach and the navigation center to address these issues, to go there, make contact, move people into the shelter, get them to move on. But a lot of them are, it really is a lack of resources and the ability to address this across the city. As I said earlier, only about 50% of the time can we get to our highest priority calls based on the staffing that we have. And those are the emergency calls. And so we certainly recognize the frustration of our community members. We recognize the public safety issue that are related to many of these as well. And we're doing our very best to get to all of these as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Go ahead. Ms. Patel, please. I'm asking nicely. I'm asking nicely. I really am asking as nice as I can. Thank you. Go ahead, Barry. Thank you. I agree.
So, Chief, I've got a question about bringing back the bike patrol that used to be to up and down the bike path.
Bicycle?
Again, you may have the bicycle patrol. You used to have at least 2, if not 4, bike patrol units.
Mm-hmm.
And just curious what happened to those, and understand the explanation you just gave about staffing. At the same time, I think a number of your concerns now are directly in the area that Mr. Lane's talking about. So that response, my observation, being an avid bike path person myself, was having them there with that quick response and just going back and forth curbed a lot of things. And it also presented a much safer feel for our residents to be able to use it. I had an unfortunate comment last week where two ladies were talking about going riding, and they said, well, we can't do it in Bakersfield, but we can do it in Ventura because they don't feel safe on the Bakersfield bike path. And my heart sank.
Yeah.
I'm like, how in the world have we gotten to the point to where people don't feel safe on our own bike path? Because I see it all the time. And so I don't know, I'm kind of asking the question, what would it take to reallocate some of those resources? And what do you need? And can you vocalize that so that some people can start to work on that? So that's kind of the first question. I'll let you respond to that. Then I have a follow-up question.
The bicycle patrols were funded by overtime primarily. And you're right on the numbers. That's about how we staff them, particularly in the later part of the week and on the weekends during the daylight hours. But it was primarily funded from overtime. It is something that certainly that we could reinitiate. And again, our impact unit through their contacts with the outreach services and the navigation center through the Transwest are really trying to identify all of these kinds of areas of highest priority, trying to get patrol resources, impact resources, other community resources, because many of these issues cannot be solved by the police department. And we shouldn't have to go to them because that's not what the community member in that particular circumstances need. However, the restoration of a bicycle patrol, normally we'll do it in the spring and the summer for limited periods of time because primarily it's been funded by overtime.
You've brought forth a very creative idea with bringing back some of the retirees. With the early retirement ages of many PDs, that might be a great place to try and supplement that bike patrol and give them a two-pronged benefit, some exercise and a supplemental income. So that could be
I like the idea, like
an interesting
creativity.
one.
Yeah, I'm not sure the issue with the annuitants has some limitations, obviously, because we certainly can't bring them back as an enforcement capacity.
I'm looking at part-time guys, 4-hour shifts,
I understand.
alternating. Sounds good to me.
I'm
but
with you.
I'll let you work on that.
I'm with you.
Is it okay to comment in general? Absolutely. So in general, that to me is a very creative idea. The bringing back the retirees. And that's something I think is something that most retirees should look at, because if they're not willing to do that, it looks like at some point there's going to be enough pressure on the state to where those benefits are going to get cut. And so, having that sort of thing, to me, that shows the ability to continue to contribute to something that maybe was a promise they couldn't keep. So that, to me, that's a great position. All of these things that were outlined, I can see the need. I think the real question that the taxpayer has is, where's the benefit? What's the benchmark? And in a different way than a straight investment, what is the return on investment? Meaning, what do you hope to achieve with these different levels of staffing? You can see very clearly, you did an excellent job of outlining, by taking officers out of administration roles, you're putting them back on the street. Does the 431 include that already, or will that be a quick 10 additional officers that are right now in administration roles?
No, the 431 is the total number of filled police officer positions, regardless of where they're assigned. It is the total number.
So they're not on the street necessarily.
Correct. I'm included in that number, for instance. So it is the entire complement of the police department.
Okay. And so that's a great solution to get more boots on the ground. But how do we measure it? Is it being successful? And are we looking at it the right way so that 12 months from now, we can say, okay, last year, this amount was improved in employees, this was improved in equipment, this is what we hope to achieve, and here's how we did. And then everybody can look at that metric, and then hopefully there are metrics that we can look at year over year, and some years may go up, some years may go down, but is our trend line moving in the right direction? Are we making the right investments in the right places?
And one of the measurements, the obvious ones right out of the gate, is our response times. How quickly can we get to the most needed emergency calls that our community members have? And that metric is something we're paying very close attention to. And by certainly transitioning officers back into the field enhances that. Having increased staffing increases that. But I would tell you now, as we increase staffing, patrol staffing is the priority. This is where the staffing goes. Right now, our investigation division is carrying a lot of vacancies because, and that's why I mentioned earlier, that some of these property financial crimes aren't being followed up on because we are trying to devote and focus as much resources as we can into the patrol division because that is the priority. Because when people call us, they want us there as quickly as we can. And so that's certainly one of the metrics. Our ability to have stable staffing throughout the crime scene unit and the additional detectives in the investigations division. What are our case clearance rates? How are they reducing? What types of cases are we being able to solve? Are we able to actually catch some of these serial offenders? Because some of the lower level offenders, particularly with property crime, are serial offenders and the crimes of opportunity. And so by having more detectives investigating them, more stable staffing with the lab techs, our police service technicians in the field that are processing these scenes in real time, leading to identification, recovery of evidence, identification of suspects through fingerprints. Those are all metrics that we're going to be able to show some improvement with this increased staffing and how we're using them.
Thank you, Chief. I wanted to key in on something about, on the number of officers we have reporting to the important calls versus, some of the more minor calls. And, policing is, obviously, as we know, very, very expensive. And also I would imagine becoming harder to fill those positions. What are your thoughts on, staffing at a level where we make sure officers are available to go to bank robberies, et cetera, and then using private patrols more or community resource officers for the non-violent events so we can keep the officers going where they need to go?
So there's a lot in that and what you just said and elements of that. So our police service technicians are not sworn officers or sworn personnel. They are handling traffic investigations. They are handling investigations of theft, burglary. We've tried to assign them as broad a range of things that we can so that officers are freed up to handle the higher priority calls. So there's certainly a role for that. And that's why we're specifically focusing on some of these positions to get as many as we can of these PSTs back in the field, because I agree with you. There are many things that fall in terms of responsibility to the police department that don't require a police officer to go to. And so we're constantly looking for those kinds of opportunities. And so we're looking across the country and seeing what other agencies and cities are doing specifically to address some of these issues. One of the things that we're doing is that was spoke about earlier this year was the pilot project that we're doing with behavioral health and putting a clinician in our 911 center. And that specifically is to address someone in crisis who doesn't need a police officer and have a clinician in the comm center that gets on the phone with this person and is able to immediately direct them, if able to behavioral health resources to intervene. And it doesn't require a police department or a police officer to respond to that at all. That's an example of the different kinds of things that we're looking to do, just exactly what you're saying. And is there capacity and opportunities to expand that further in other areas? I think that there are, but I agree with you in a lot of the things that you've just said. There's just a lot in there and limitations, obviously, because public safety is our primary responsibility. So we want to assure that however we modify this sort of service or deployment of staff, that we are doing so responsibly and making sure that we're able to protect the public. I think, did I answer everything? Okay.
Thanks, Chief. Mine's more of a budget money question, so I don't know which way this goes, but so 479 authorized, 431 filled. I'd imagine there's retirements and that lateral movement probably goes both ways. So I don't know if we're up or down on that. So measure in, approve so many and we pay for them and then it goes into the recurring costs. So my question is as those other positions go away and we're just basically keeping up, yet we're putting the bill for it. Is that what's going on here or?
I think I appreciate the question, Committee Member Holt, and through the chair, we do have separations that happen throughout any given year. I think our number of separations by comparison to the average department for people within their regular career path is lower than average. So that's good news. We don't have that many laterals leaving us. We have had in recent years a lot of retirements. We've had a lot of individuals. Our force was, at that, I guess that age peak where we had a lot of separations, and so we look at that closely. But to answer specifically the financial piece of that, we really didn't run across this until just in this last 3 to 6 months, where we had a number of PSVS Academy, grads, and going into field training officer roles, and then having other retirees retire out. And so we had general fund vacancies while we had PSVS filled positions. And so what we are going to do moving forward is on a quarterly basis, we're going to review how many positions are filled on the general fund and the PSVS side, and do some shifting of where officers are funded from. So as we have officers retire out or leave out of general funded positions and those become vacant, we'll move some of those officers that are funded by PSVS into those general funded slots. And then those PSVS positions will then become vacant. And so those vacancy savings go back to year-end balances that can be used on PSVS related projects. But because it happens throughout any given week and month, we're going to just do a true up each quarter to evaluate which positions are vacant and move folks into those general funded positions.
My first question has to do with finances, so maybe the chief is not the best one to answer this. The total salaries and benefits listed at $5.8 million. Does that include the retirement costs? We originally estimated it was 6%. So that's the full allocation plus the retirement is within that?
Correct. It is a fully loaded cost.
Okay. And secondly, Chief, I'd like to drill down just a little bit on the 28 officers that you're looking at. You're hoping the net gain is going to be the 28. Is that right? Net gain to the overall count of the sworn officers?
I'm not sure I'm following you on what.
Okay,
If I may, committee member?
It's kind of an interesting number that you've got. Okay, so you've got 9 police officers and 8 senior police officers as new positions to be staffed. Now, currently, if I understand correctly, some of the current police officers will become senior police officers through experience and time in and whatnot. In the same vein, the 5 new slots for police sergeants, those are going to be new personnel that's in, not necessarily somebody who is currently a member of the police force who has passed the sergeant's exam and is moving up.
So the hiring of the 28 additional staff, everybody will come in as a police officer. And as those numbers increase, we'll be able to promote people who are currently working to the rank of sergeant. So it wouldn't be somebody that, I hope I'm answering your question, but they all come in as a police officer, but this additional staffing will allow us to promote these particular individuals to go do these particular jobs, to maintain the span of control and that sort of thing.
So we wouldn't expect somebody to be a police sergeant or even a detective for a number of years.
That's correct.
But we're funding for that higher salary at this point.
Well, we're hiring because we will make the promotion as the staffing comes in. These promotions to a sergeant will be funded here, yes, but they are currently employee positions. So we don't have these 5 sergeant positions today that exist within the police department. So as the staffing increases, we will have other needs that require the additional supervision as a result of that. So that will necessitate the promotion of these 5 sergeants that don't currently exist today within the police department.
Okay, off the top of your head, do you have any idea how many police sergeants we have?
53.
53. Okay, and then we've got five here, and then we're putting back 2 into patrol, 1 from the digital forensic unit and 1 as the academy coordinator.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. We had this question, I think it was last year, it's hard to say what the ratio should be for sergeants to patrol officers so that we don't get top heavy, start getting too top heavy, depending upon the department and what work is being done there.
Sure.
But are we to that point where we're starting to get top heavy? I mean, there, you know, in maybe some of the departments, you can have one sergeant per 20 officers, or you might have in another department, one sergeant for 3 or 4.
The industry standard is about 8 to 1, particularly out in the field. And within the detective division, it varies a little bit different because of the day-to-day responsibilities and the necessity to have that direct oversight varies. So it varies a little bit within the police department, but it is something that we're paying attention to ensure that we don't do exactly what you're suggesting.
And also to get back to what committee member Hibbard said, and something that Mr. Turnipseed said in his comments. Looking at the table that you provided here for the budget summary, that's also fairly consistent with the table we were given back in February of 2019 as the year 3 of the proposed budget spending by the police department. We are a little higher on the sergeant count that was proposed back then, but following that table, there's a list of 9 key performance indicators that the department provided. And I think if we go back and take a look at those, we can see, has the police department accomplished some of those things by their own performance indicator wishes, like reducing response times in line with the citywide average of 5 minutes and 30 seconds within 3 years, answering 95% of all 911 calls within 15 seconds or less. It'd be nice to know we're adding all this staffing and all this money. Are we doing what you wanted to do? And to speak to those 2 gentlemen, that's one way to do it, is that there's indicators that you've provided, or the department has provided, and it'd be nice to know, has the department been hitting those?
Very much so. And those are specifically spelled out that way for us to measure that and amongst ourselves as well. But like I said, you know, we are still in the early stages of the staffing. Mr. Christian alluded to it a little bit. We had higher than normal rates of attrition in 2019 and 2020 in particular. We normally have about 17 to 20 separations a year for various things, retirements, industrial disability retirements and things. And we saw significantly higher numbers in 2019 and 2020. Otherwise, we would have made more progress than we have today. But those are indicators that we are still paying attention to and watching, and certainly we'll make them part of our presentations coming back before you to exactly articulate how and what progress we're making. Normally, it's about 17 to 20 per year for various reasons. But in 2019 and 2020 in particular, we had much higher numbers in the 30s and 40s. Well, you had a couple academy classes of people who had come together that came kind of aged out and retired together. That was a unique thing that occurred. And then we had some disability retirements as well, a higher number than normal.
Mr. Rowland, if you don't mind turning on your microphone so that we can have your comments for the recording. Thank you.
I just have a question related to the CARES funding that we will be receiving. Is there plans to allocate some of that to this request of $10 million and also for the other departments?
Thank you, committee member. The funding requests that you see recommended for all of the public safety vital services tax measure, we anticipate allocating that to the public safety, PSVS measure, and that the American Rescue Plan Act funds will go to entirely different projects.
Okay, thank you.
Julie, will you tell me if Mr. Prince has a question online? Fred, I don't know if you can hear us.
Yeah,
I want to make sure if you have any questions, just to raise your hand or put the little icon up there. Are there any other
Okay.
excellent dialogue today?
Yes, I have a question.
Oh, let's let Fred go. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation as well. As was indicated earlier, the general budget, based upon the taxes, the income has increased over the past year, a little higher than anticipated. The same with the PSVS budget as well. So we actually have additional funds. And my question is, because of the fact that in your general budget, are some of these requests that you're making today, should they also, or were they made as part of your general budget request? And are all of your requests coming to this particular request with the PSVS?
The requests that you heard today are all requests related to the measure and not related to any general fund request.
Okay.
And
All right.
if I may, Committee Member Prince, to answer more specifically, there are other requests to other funds from police for some training costs, but there are not personnel requests to the general fund. I think that was part of your question. There are not other position requests to the general fund.
Okay. And Mr. Clegg, if you can remind me, when it comes to the measure on the request itself, on the measure itself, was it indicated that the measure that was voted on was to go towards the hiring of new police officers specifically, as compared to movement or promotions within the police department?
I may actually ask Mr. Hewitt to help me on any historical perspective here, because the measure itself, the language that was on the ballot, did not actually list 100 officers. It listed public safety, it listed quality of life, it listed economic development as examples. I would say, however, the commitment to the community has been very public and clear that part of this measure would be to add 100 sworn personnel, and that's how we've phrased that. I think we absolutely appreciate the questions and the thought process around the command staff and the leadership roles within the department. But I think it is important to reflect that to add officers, they do need those supervisory sergeants. And I think, again, fair question to determine what's the right span of control there. But in our perspective, the sworn personnel is about providing those patrol and overall services. And that's how we've looked at it, as 100 sworn positions.
Okay. Okay. And then one other question for the chief, in regards to the spot shooter program. I know he indicated the amount of times that the officers, the department have went out in regards to these incidents. My question is in regards to the number of arrests based on these particular incidents that occurred in which they went out on the spot shooters. I didn't hear how many, or approximately how many arrests were made due to this program. Did he indicate that?
No, I didn't. I can provide the total number of arrests that we have made specifically solely related to ShotSpotter alerts. I don't have that off the top of my head. I listed some incidents where we responded to activations and made some arrests in some very serious incidents. I know that we've seized about 26 firearms related to ShotSpotter activations so far this year.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please, I would like to have that information if you can provide that sometime in the near future. I appreciate it. Okay. That's all the questions I have at this moment. Thank you.
As far as the patrol vehicles, how many do we take out of service normally in a year?
I'm looking at Nick in Public Works and trying to figure out the answer to that. We, or Darren, an actual number that we cycle. I don't have that off the top of my head. Yeah.
30? Okay. The reason I ask is because in year one, we asked for 25 patrol vehicles. Year two, we asked for 25, and now we're asking for 30. So like, if it's the number that's keeping up with the normal retirement of patrol vehicles, and that's understandable. But we're adding staffing that we don't normally add. You know, it's a goal. We've got normal vehicles, but we've got increased staffing.
You want to respond? Committee member Louis, we typically have a replacement schedule of 8 years is the average life cycle of a police vehicle. So right now, the 25, 25, and 30 that you're referencing is consistent with the new staffing that they're bringing on. We have additional vehicles each year that we are in a replacement, which is typically the 30 vehicles, police vehicles, whether it's through their captain's vehicles or their patrol vehicles, but they are cycled through on an 8-year basis. And obviously, sometimes there's more or less because there's accidents involved. So the true number is very difficult to define, but our average replacement is about 30. We will see more vehicles, after 8 years of being in service for the PSVS for replacements, but those are placed on a replacement schedule. And there are funds that are put aside as an operation and maintenance. So as we're utilizing those vehicles, there are funds that are put aside to repurchase the new vehicles after that 8 years.
That leads me to another question. As the vehicles are in years, say 5 through 8, and I've seen some of the way the vehicles get. The maintenance goes up. When we buy these vehicles new, we budget for the maintenance. The maintenance though comes out of the general funds.
Maybe I can jump in real quick, and then Nick can chime in. So part of the ongoing costs for the police department, say for instance, we purchase a vehicle out of the public safety and vital service measure like it's proposed that we do this year, 30 vehicles. Those vehicles go into our fleet management system. Nick's team actually tracks the ongoing operations and maintenance for those vehicles. Any sort of O&M costs are charged back to the police department. It's like a rental agency. In the Public Safety and Vital Services Fund, there are dollars put aside for those ongoing operational costs to support that vehicle that was purchased. Another component of those rates that are budgeted within the police department budget for ongoing costs is the eventual replacement cost for that vehicle. So we're putting a little bit of money away every year to have the dollars on hand 8 years from now when that vehicle needs to be replaced. And so we have Nick's team does an excellent job. They have a very comprehensive system that they look at. And we are now also, we're not just looking at what it costs today, we're projecting out future costs and putting that away as well. Nick's team, again, has a pretty tried and true formula that they use. So that's actually included in the ongoing costs for the police department and the respective fund that the vehicle was purchased out of.
Question on that comment is, so the 30 vehicles, is that the full allotment for the police budget this year?
Those would be the additional vehicles that the police department is proposing to purchase to support the additional staffing that the police department is proposing to add that is in their proposal this year. There are other vehicles that will be replaced within the police department that are part of our normal replacement schedule that is not part of this discussion today.
Yes, we will move on now to a presentation by the fire department. This one will actually be a little bit shorter, but some updates on the rescue squad units that were added last year and a couple of capital projects. I would signal that our public works presentation is fairly lengthy. But this presentation and then that last piece, the fourth item listed on the agenda, it can be pretty timely as well. And so I would suggest that we move through this one fairly quickly so we can save some time for Public Works, because that will be a little bit longer of a presentation.
You got 2 minutes. I'm just kidding.
All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair Committee, Anthony Galageza, your Bakersfield Fire Chief. Let me start off by just providing a quick update. Last year, this committee made the recommendation to go through with the rescue squads, and just to understand how important that is to the fire department. In 2018, we had a total of 40,717 calls. In 2020, we had 46,779 calls for service. And seeing that increase, and seeing that Fire Station 2 and 6, where those were allotted, Fire Station 6 is the 13th busiest engine company in the United States. It is the 6th busiest in the state of California. So they run a lot. They needed that help last year, and that's what you provided with recommendations to council. Now for just a quick story, one story I've heard of many, and I'll make it quick because I know we're in a hurry. 61-year-old grandmother. She suffered a cardiac arrest, had 3 grandchildren that she takes care of in the southeast part of town. Station 6 on Union and Brundage, the rescue was out on a medical aid, another medical aid. But because they're on another medical aid, Engine 6 was responding from inside the house, the firehouse, and were able to get there in a timely fashion. Otherwise, a year before that, 6 months, it would have been coming from another district. Grandmother's responsible for those 3 children. They were able to get there on time, commit to CPR, and they brought her back. She's now with them. Of course, of HIPAA laws, everything else, we cannot come forward with her name and all that, but we have many stories coming out like that. So that's what saves lives. So I wanted to bring that story before you, but last year I promised you here, or before, is that this would save lives, and it has. The graph you're looking at right now, I promised also that we would be based on data, not emotion. So with that story, I lied a little. We're going to the data at this point. The rescues were placed into service just a little over 6 months ago in July 1st of 2020. That being said, if you look at the rescue 2, the first column in the bar, 1653, that's the amount of calls in 7 months the rescue 2 has gone on. If you look at the black, that was engine 2 the year before without the rescue, 5,120 calls. And if you look at the one next to it in the yellow, that is the past year with the engine and the split within the 6 months prior. And the blue is the 6 months prior to the rescue arriving. They ran 2,562 calls in 6 months prior. Once the rescue 2 was available and in service, they ran 1,703 calls. That allowed the rescue to make sure that that engine was in their first in while they ran numerous medical aid calls and calls for service. As you see, Station 6, it's even more calls and even a better response. And in 2019 compared to 2020 is a massive improvement. Even more so, the rescue response outside the first in district. If you see this throughout these numerous stations within the city, they were able to respond in those districts as well and give assistance for service. And this has shown that the data is proving that it is saving lives. These 2 rescues and this rescue squad model has proven effective. And it's allowed the fire engine to stay within their first in, commit to the rescues, commit to the fires, and also commit to those EMS. And here's the issue, is that they get on CPR calls once they know that there's a cardiac arrest. We get 5 people assisting, which is needed and is industry standard for what we need with those people on scene to be able to provide the best medical aid and the best service, basic life support. Now we'll go down to this year. I just wanted to make sure that you understood exactly what your recommendations did for us last year and how it's enhanced the city and how it's enhanced safety for the citizens of Bakersfield. Okay, right here, these first 2 items. First is the hazardous materials monitor, Thermo Fisher Gemini. We'll explain those in the Prime Event System for 3 of the Bakersfield City fire stations. You approved 11 for upgrade last year. And that helps with emissions, cancer-causing agents with diesel exhaust within the stations. The 3 this year are whole new units that had to be installed within these stations. So we're asking for those this year. That being said, the first is called the Thermo Gemini. This will be used also throughout the state, throughout the Central Valley, because the City of Bakersfield Fire Department has the only Type 1 hazardous materials team from Visalia to LA County. That being said, the hazardous materials monitor is used to identify a broad range of unknown chemicals, which include solids, liquids, chemical warfare, and explosives. Our current monitor was purchased over 12 years ago. That has become obsolete and does not meet current OES Type 1 requirements. In 2022, Bakersfield Fire will undergo another inspection through Cal OES and be able to get recertified and Type 1. And this is important throughout the state because we respond with master mutual aid with other cities, other counties, and being the only one within Kern County from Visalia to LA County, it's critical. We all know that with oil and ag and how important that is. Next is the Plymouth system for 3 stations. Just a quick overview, Plymouth is a vehicle exhaust removal system utilized in the station apparatus bay to remove harmful diesel exhaust. In 2019-2020 PSVS, you approved 11 stations to get equipped, or not equipped, but rehabbed, because we had the units in those 11 stations, but they just needed to be completely rehabbed and to be able to come to industry standards to meet Cal OSHA permissible exposure limits, or PEL. This year, we'll be installing Plymouth systems with your recommendation for the remaining 3 stations. And it's important to eliminate the diesel exhaust issues, cancer-causing agents, and it'll just improve overall firefighter health and wellness. The total cost we're asking for this year is $420,000 for both units. And I think it's a great investment for both hazardous materials from within the whole Central Valley, and as long as also with the Plymouth event for firefighter wellness within the station. And also, we also have educational groups, young students, elementary, who will be coming in hopefully now, once we start to release this and be able to get our kids back for public education and also remove those harmful exhausts. And I promised I'd be quick. So any questions?
Chief, or do we still have the, we had the capital contingent projects from last May to the tune of about 548,000. Those are still contingent?
They're not contingent. Thank you, committee member, for the question. And through the chair, they're not contingent projects. At mid-year budget, when we reviewed and recognized that we did receive all of the funds that we anticipated receiving, and in fact, beyond that, part of our mid-year action with the city council was to move forward with the contingent projects because we identified we did have the funding to do them.
I only ask because when we had the mid-year meeting in December, we spent $15 million on other projects, but we didn't say anything about those contingent projects.
It was in the presentation. We didn't spend a lot of time on them, but we did acknowledge that the positions that were contingent would be moving forward with our mid-year recommendation to council.
Thank you.
Again, in interest of time, if we can move forward, we'll have Public Works Director Nick Fiddler provide our Public Works presentation.
It's obvious at this point, but I don't know when Mr. Prince joined us, but you have him noted that he's present. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Nick Fiddler, Public Works Director for the city. I'm honored today to present our proposed fiscal year 21-22 Public Safety and Vital Services, otherwise known as PSVS measure in phase 3 for us. So a quick overview, highlights of PSVS beautification efforts that we performed in the past year. One of our major projects that we completed, which is the Brundage Lane Navigation Center, and then our proposal plans fulfill the PSVS priorities and council goals, and then proposed capital improvement projects. and then proposed positions, and then later with questions and comments. Highlights from our PSVS beautification efforts. The part of the PSVS program, we expanded some of our biohazard cleanups in the downtown core to include some of the Old Town Kern areas, and the same thing with our downtown street ambassadors. Street ambassadors clean areas within the downtown core and the Old Town Kern. And then the new element that we added this fiscal year are our Clean Cities team, or Clean City team. So the Clean Cities team, we added 6 new teams that go throughout the whole city that pick up various bulky items, illegal dumping sites, just regular debris within the roadways, alleyways, and then they will also assist with parks and code enforcement as needed. Another item that we added this year was Clean City pop-up drop-off events. And I'll get a little bit more into that element later, but that is primarily to reduce the amount of illegal dumping throughout the city. It gives citizens another opportunity to take trash to somewhere closer within town. Our landfills are on the outskirts of town. It could take sometimes up to 30 minutes just to drive out to the landfill and then come back. So it's much easier for someone to find a quiet, dark spot and empty the back into their truck out into an alleyway or a field. This Clean City pop-up gives them the option to come to a site within town and dump off those unwanted belongings. And then, like I mentioned before, the Clean City teams support our rapid response teams, both code and parks. Code and parks will go in and do a lot of the encampment abatement, but like I like to say, is an encampment kind of looks like a bomb. You have your hot spot in the middle and all the debris filled on the outside. So the code and parks team will go abate the encampment, and then this Clean Cities team will come in after them and get the shrapnel that's spread out from the encampment. So they can go back and focus on other encampments. So going into some of the Clean City initiatives, we have their clean teams. Getting into that, some of the highlights and statistics. We're working with 2 companies, California Highway Adoption Company and the Bakersfield Homeless Center. This allows our rapid response teams to focus on encampments and the parks to do maintenance projects. Available for special projects and for cross-departmental support. They also support our Water Resources Division and items such as river cleanups. They're dispatched citywide on an as-needed basis. At our previous meeting, we approved the partial employment of a support staff that will help direct them to various calls. So we have now a person that's 24/7, 8 to 5, 5 days a week, that's taking calls from various positions, looking through our city source staff, and they're directing these 6 teams to the hotspots as they get identified. And we're trying to do that and have at least a 24 to 48-hour response time to those calls. We provide the hotspot monitoring. They are assigned specific areas of the city that we know are continual issues where we have illegal dumpings on a regular basis. And then citizens can report this through the mobile app. And as you can see, since starting this in mid-January, they've collected 7,267 bags. And then 155 carts, those are shopping carts, 276 mattresses that have been placed throughout our city's right-of-ways, and then 347 couches, 56 tires. And when we talk about miscellaneous, that could be something like a refrigerator, washer and dryer, big elements. So that's that won't fit in a bag. So you can see the amount of debris that has been removed from our public right-of-ways. Going into the pop-up drop-off events, these have been very successful. Our first events, I think there was a lot of pent-up demand from people that were stuck at home during COVID and cleaned out all their closets and their garage because we had tons of material delivered at these first events, which was exciting. It was kind of exciting and kind of a little bit scary because we had lines of traffic and we were kind of overwhelmed at first, but now we have a good process worked out. We have the right staffing. So as you can see in the right-hand corner of this slide, you can see some of the items that are accepted. And again, this is aimed to deter illegal dumping. We're finding all these elements that are thrown on the roadway because they don't know what else to do with them, and they don't have the ability to drive all the way out to the landfill. So they'll find an alleyway or a vacant field and just push it out the back into their truck. And unfortunately, I haven't seen it. We've seen them down the middle of the road where someone driving with it, not strapped off, it just blows off and they, oh, it's gone. I don't have to worry about that anymore. So these are what's great about the events. It prevents them from having to get onto the freeways to take it to the landfills. So again, it helps clean up our freeway system by not having the litter and debris blow out of the back of their truck when they hit the 65 mile an hour. So we try to do these events twice a month, and each event will have 2 locations. So we'll do an event in the southeast and the northwest and on one day, and then we'll do an event in the northeast and the southwest on another weekend, Saturday. So we're trying to give the public the most opportunity to shorten their distance to deliver their materials to these events. The sites are varying, so we're trying to move them around to make it more convenient again for the residents. So at first we held them at one place to get people used to these pop-up drop-offs, but we plan on kind of circulating them around through various city facilities where we have enough space to actually accompany this program. But as you can see, we have 112 tons of material, and a ton is 2,000 pounds. So that's a significant amount of material. 9.4 tons of recycling, 12 tons of metal, 377 e-waste items. Those are like computers, typewriters, anything that has some sort of electronic device in it, because a lot of people don't know you're not supposed to throw those into the trash can. Wood waste is 6.3 tons. We're trying to encourage people to use our green waste facility in lieu of bringing those to these pop-up drop-offs, but we do get some. 77 tires, and then again another 155 mattresses. We are trying to do a little bit of public outreach on the mattresses as well, because there are recycling centers within town where you can take your mattresses, so you don't have to wait for one of these pop-up drop-off events. But as we get a little bit more into this, we'll start doing a little bit more education and a little bit more social media on these events, because now we're ramped up. We know what to expect. We have the right equipment there for the people that are coming. Wanted to jump into one of the major projects that we completed, which is the Brundage Lane Navigation Center. And just to point out the fact that this all happened during COVID. So it was very difficult, one, to get materials, people, staff, everything. So we ended up doing a lot of this in-house and then contracting out small elements. So the city acted like the general contractor for a significant portion of that project. We did contract out the restrooms and the laundry room, one section of it, because it was intense with special trades. So we did end up contracting that portion out. We completed in-house a majority of the kitchen, which you see right here on this slide. We did contract out elements such as the plumbing and then the exhaust hood that you see in that picture, but all the other equipment was purchased and installed by city staff. Just a before and after of some of the dorm rooms. When we purchased the facility, it was an open warehouse. So we ended up coming in and creating rooms throughout that facility, whether it's dorm rooms, dining rooms, restrooms. We went through and modified several old restrooms that didn't meet ADA. The remodels we did with city staff, the new we ended up contracting out. Another before and after, this was what it looked like before. That was a cotton viewing room where they would actually grade the cotton, and then now we turned it into the dining room. This was an old office. We ended up converting it into a exam room. So we had to add plumbing and electrical and various improvements to meet the codes for an exam room. This is kind of the main entryway hallway into the services side of the shelter. Not a whole lot of changes in this area, just freshening up paint, added a few new doors to it, and then flooring. We were able to keep most of that intact.
Stop you.
Yeah.
I love all these before and after. They're actually my favorite, but just with the interest of time, can we just skip to slide
Yeah.
17 and just
Definitely.
start going over some of these? That's the proposed capital improvement projects.
Sure. Okay. Going back, just wanted to highlight some of the PSVS priorities. We're meeting several of the goals of the PSVS priorities, and then also meeting several of the city council goals as shown in this, highlighted in yellow. Moving into the proposed capital improvement projects, we are proposing $7.8 million in various capital improvement projects. Item number 1 is West Side Parkway landscaping phase 1. This would include landscaping from Truxton Avenue to Coffee Road. We would look at phasing out the West Side Parkway over 3 phases to make it manageable. When we're looking at landscaping, we are taking into consideration several factors when we're proposing the designs for this. We're looking for drought tolerant type of landscaping. We're looking at site hardening of the facility to try to prevent some of the homeless encampment activity that may occur within the corridor. So adding hardscapes, rockscapes that will prevent walking through the area. So phase 1 is will include design and construction, and then State Route 58 corridor enhancements. There's been a significant amount of work on State Route 58 between Cottonwood and 99.
Can I just stop you?
Yeah,
You said phase 1. How many phases are you planning?
3 phases.
And that's all included here, or?
Not that phase 1 is from Coffee Road to Truxton.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there'll be 3 phases. So we Coffee Road to Truxton, and then Coffee to Callaway, then Callaway to Heath. Again, the State Route 58 corridor enhancement. State Route 58 is a major corridor into the downtown, into the city of Bakersfield. Our state routes are the first impression for city people entering into our city. So this corridor enhancement would again go into an element of adding hardscapes, drought tolerant landscaping, and site hardening to prevent homeless encampments, trying to make walking paths difficult. They like to walk up on the bench shelves to get to various places. We're proposing to put type of cobbles and rocks that they can't walk easily. Plantings that are not accommodating for encampments and things like that. The Streetlight Study, which several of you guys had asked about last meeting, we are in the process. We're getting near to completing the Streetlight Study. This would put another $1 million into implementation of the priorities that are addressed in that Streetlight Study. As part of the priorities that we're looking at right now, they are basing off of safety and accidents, pedestrian safety, bicycle safety. They've taken all the different areas of data that we have from either a public works department, police department, or traffic engineering, studies that we've consulted out for bikes and peds, and they're integrating all that to look at where we see high crime incidents, accidents, and they'll come up with a priority list. I see you have a question. Yeah.
Question is, the original study, is it still ongoing?
It is. We're getting very close. They submitted a rough draft. I think I'm losing my weeks. I think it was early this week. They're proposing to finish up a little bit more draft that in 2 weeks that they're highlighting. They're being very detailed. They're going through and actually doing light meter readings at some of these accident intersections that are have been determined accidents as a high priority. And they're getting lighting readings at night, checking accidents days versus nights. So they're doing their due diligence and being very thorough. So they should have within the next couple of weeks what I call a 95% draft available to us.
So will this $1 million then be to supplement the study to even further determine, or is it to actually implement streetlights? And
It's to implement streetlights. That's correct.
Okay.
We actually have $1 million from last year, so we'll have $2 million if this is approved to go out and implement working down the priority list of their proposed projects. So
Okay.
we'll be able to go out and put these monies directly into use.
Thank you.
State Route 99 and Hosking Avenue interchange. This is what we consider a gateway interchange. It is at the southern boundary of the city. It would make a nice gateway entrance for those people that are traveling into the city of Bakersfield. So proposing a $750,000 project to do landscaping, again, using hardscapes and drought tolerant trees or landscaping for that facility. Number 5, pedestrian and bike improvements on Chester between 4th and Brundage. That's actually a project that we submitted a grant for, and we ranked. We didn't make the statewide rank, but we did make the rank for our region. The project was budgeted at or estimated at 750,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. We only received a grant for 210,000. So this project would actually leverage state monies to make improvements to Chester Avenue. And again, this was based off a bike and ped safety study that was performed a few years ago. It was a project that we nominated for a grant, and we were eligible for this grant based on rankings. I'll have a slide here in a minute that shows a little bit of what it includes. And then number 6, corridor and street enhancements for design of Chester Avenue. We are currently in the downtown Chester or downtown corridor enhancement program. They're doing a master plan to enhance corridors throughout downtown. Chester Avenue and H Street have been identified as some of the major north-south corridors that are entering into downtown from 58. We see this as a good opportunity to combine the item 5 and 6 together, completing out the design, because item 5 was just a small chunk. We want to take it all the way from 58 all the way down into Truxton Avenue and complete that whole corridor. It will include both bike ped and kind of some complete street type of improvements for Chester Avenue. And then also it'll move into H Street once we do Chester. This is a 3-year plan for those facilities. 7 is bollard replacements at Mill Creek. We've seen a significant amount of vandalism to the existing bollards within the Mill Creek community, or the linear park there. Kids are pushing them over. Homeless are pushing them over. They're vandalizing the lights. They're plugging in various components to charge, like phones. So this is to go through and replace those with a more durable, less vandal-proof type of bollard. Number 8 is replace entry monument signs. It's not really replace, it's to enhance. You guys saw and may have seen last PSVS committee meeting, Chris's presentation had a rendering of the entry monument on the both south side of town and at Hosking Avenue, and on the north side of town. These monuments were a public-private partnership when they were first installed. They have been modified once before when we switched logos to the squiggle. Now we have our new logo, so we want to upgrade that to reflect our new logo.
Excuse me, Nick, I'm going to jump in here for just a quick minute for two reasons. One, to provide some overall context, and also two, I just sense the timing or urgency. Maybe we can go to questions on these capital projects after my comments. So one of the challenges that the Oversight Committee has is that you're looking at one element of a much larger city budget. And so I just wanted to provide a little bit of that additional context. So when we think about road projects, for example, we have 4 different or maybe even 5 different funding sources that help us do local road improvements. We're going to have $25 to $30 million of road improvements through these other funding sources. One of the reasons we haven't seen many road projects proposed and under PSVS is because we do have other funding sources we can leverage for that. Similar to bike and pedestrian. We have probably $12 or $15 million of bike and pedestrian in next year's budget from multiple other funding sources. We're fortunate to be able to leverage many grants for that. And so we prioritize the grant funding for bike and pedestrian. You see a few examples here, though, where we're taking PSVS and saying, we need some funding to be a match or a leverage to some of those projects to get some of those projects done and to also get some of those projects approved through matching. So when we think about PSVS, this is actually one area where when we've heard the committee comment often, where do we see some of that extra? Where do we see some of those things that are different? And there are many standard capital improvement funding sources that we keep doing many good projects out of every year that don't come to here. And this is where we kind of do the projects that we can't get funded through some of those other tools or through some of those other funding mechanisms. And to give a little more context to some of these, what we're calling them landscaping or beautification. But when you look at the West Side Parkway #1 there and 58 and 99 #4, what this is really about is, as Mr. Fiddler mentioned, our highways are really our welcoming mat to the rest of California and many other visitors that are coming and passing through from other places. And the intent here is to no longer have dusty, overgrown weeds, litter and debris up and down our highway corridors. It's going to take some time to get to the full 99 corridor, the full 58 and the West Side Parkway, probably even 178 as well. But we feel that it's part of our economic development and quality of life to start getting at that issue. But because that's an enhancement that we want to see above and beyond what Caltrans will do, we have to push on them and provide some of our own funding to do some of these types of projects to have above and beyond and better. And so we're not talking about, putting in a bunch of trees and shrubs, they're going to die and have the same look that we have today. We're talking about changing the look and feel, putting in those harder treatments. If you can imagine some places like Las Vegas or Phoenix that have nice looking, well-designed treatments that do not have a nix. Were you zipping forward to those? Yeah, go ahead. That have a different look and feel, but are much easier to maintain and prevent a lot of the challenges around homelessness. So to us, we feel like it meets the intent of PSVS because it is making important improvements that we can't make in other ways. And it's going to save us a lot of money in the long run. So those are just a couple of thoughts about seeing these proposals as a one piece of a much larger budget that has many other elements, but these are the ones that we have recommended.
So these show some examples of what Mr. Clegg was describing. The darker oranger colors are typically like a hardscape or a rockscape, and then some more use of different types of materials to come across as an architectural feature, whether it's rocks, DG, bark, or concrete. Back up a little bit to kind of show where these improvements are geographically within the city. You can see we're hitting all areas throughout the city. Drilling into downtown, you can see the number 5 is that the grant we were talking about, and then P6 is both the Chester Avenue and H Street improvements. P2 is the State Route 58. improvements. So going into proposed positions, we're requesting 2 full-time positions, 1 civil engineer 3, 1 maintenance craft worker 1, and then 4 part-time laborers, and then overtime for heavy equipment operators. So the engineer 3 mainly oversees, manages a team or a squad of designers and consultants. With PSVS, there is a significant amount of consultant work. Our department, Public Works, supports all other departments when it comes to a capital improvement program. We actually house the capital improvement program, and then we support the various departments like Recreation and Parks or Fire, or even PD and some of their projects. For instance, the shooting range that Chief Terry presented, that's something that my staff oversaw the design and construction of. So the position would be dedicated to the West Side Parkway landscaping, streetlight studies, the implementation of the streetlight improvements, the corridor and streetscape enhancements on Chester and H, the State Route 58 project, helping with several parks improvements that you'll see in for future presentations. So there's a lot of work. I also wanted to point out in the lower right-hand corner of this slide, you can see some of the improvements that we're proposing, and wanted to touch on some of the comments that Mr. Hightower has made in the discussions with Mr. Hightower. These are some of the improvements that he was proposing for 4th Street that he was, as he was up here talking. So this happens to be Chester Avenue, but you know, that's what you will be looking at as part of that PED project, that grant project that we're proposing. The maintenance craft worker, they do a significant amount of work. This room is a perfect example of what our maintenance craft workers do. There has been a significant increase of facilities through PSVS. There's a significant amount of remodels required due to PSVS. As we get new staffing, we have to remodel various work areas to accommodate those new staffing. And then the additional maintenance needs, for instance, like the Brundage Lane Navigation Center, the new BPD Training Center. Those are all new buildings that we're taking on as a maintenance program when they get a call of a clogged up toilet, or maybe a door that's not shutting right. These crews go out there and do that. And then the convention center's arena is another example. We went in and painted some of the concourse level and improvements throughout those facilities. We also do fire station updates. A lot of the fire stations are outdated. We'll come in and redo some of the kitchen areas or the bathrooms, some of the living areas that are heavily used because it is a 24/7 facility. The supporting positions for the Clean City Initiative, we're asking for 4 part-time laborers. These are for people to come out and help direct traffic and control what's placed in the bins, because we're having the people sort as they're disposing of their materials. So metal elements go into a metal container, or furniture goes into one container, and regular trash goes into another. So these we have 2 people at each event, one helping direct traffic and another one monitoring where they're placing it. So that's why we need a total of 4. These are typically like college students just looking for weekend work. So this is only on Saturdays. So that's what we're proposing. And then overtime for heavy equipment operators. We're having to haul these bins as they fill up during the event. We'll haul out a bin, bring in and dump off a new one so they can continue circulate those bins. And again, this is just overtime for 3 equipment operators for those events. So that completes my presentation. If there's any questions?
Questions from the committee?
Actually, this is directed at Mr. Clegg. As you know, a couple of meetings ago, the entire committee unanimously voted on a recommendation that we direct the city council to set aside a significant amount of money for the redevelopment of Southeast Bakersfield and Old Town Kern. And I realize that we're probably going to address some of those issues in the next presentation, which will be in a couple of weeks. The problem that I have is that not knowing what amount of allocation that we're going to have for that section of the city, when we would like to see a significant amount of allocation for that project, I'm not prepared to vote yes today on allocating $6.7 million on highway landscaping improvements, knowing that, not knowing whether or not the city is going to address the issue of redevelopment of Southeast Bakersfield and Old Town Kern. So my suggestion is that if my committee members might want to consider not voting today on these recommendations, but voting on the entire package of recommendations at the next presentation, because absent a significant amount of money going toward redevelopment of Southeast Bakersfield and Old Town Kern, I'm not about to vote yes on $6.7 million of landscaping.
Yeah, thank you, committee member. Just a point of clarification on what we're trying to do today. We're actually not asking for a vote on any of the items today. Our intent was to present all of this material, come back to the next meeting, present that set of materials, and then ask for a vote on the full package at the end. I would reflect really quickly too, we'll be able to provide in that last presentation a breakdown of not just project by project, but each department, how much funding is being proposed by department, and have some of those summary information in that last meeting where we would look to have the vote. And I would just confirm that yes, that conversation about revitalization dollars is in the next meeting. We've recommended $3 million for community revitalization projects, but I would also 3 million. I would also reflect that many of the projects that we're talking about in parks and also these projects are having impacts on East Bakersfield and Southeast Bakersfield. I mean, it is important to think about revitalization, but many of our capital projects and park projects do that as well. And so we'll want to make sure that full context is there as we consider these recommendations as well.
Thank you for the clarification. Other questions? Yes.
As far as the drop-off events, I think that's a great idea. I think everyone that spends any time in our foothills can see what's going on. So I'm sure there's some overlap with county on this also, like for instance, the Roberts Lane drop-off or transfer station. I think that might be a county facility, or is that city?
Roberts Lane is not 100% sure which Roberts Lane you're referring to, but the county does bulky item drop-offs, I want to say 2 times a year. And we do try to coordinate them so that we're not doing on the same day.
Yeah.
They host events typically out at like Cal State Bakersfield, sometimes I think BC, but we are coordinating our efforts to make sure that we're not doubling up on a same weekend, so we can separate our resources.
Right on. And then how are you guys advertising those city drop-offs? I haven't really seen much. Maybe I don't Facebook, so.
Yeah, a lot of it's through our social media sites, Facebook. We do put it out in our Gen Info on Fridays. Like I said, we initially didn't push it out really hard because we wanted to learn before we ended up coming out and just having, hundreds of cars come out and we would fail. I want it to be a good experience for people. So not wait 45 minutes to dump trash off, because then they would have loaded their truck up, saw the line, and then drove to that alleyway and dumped it off. So we're to the point now where we're going to start pushing out a lot more information on the events, but we have been working with, I think we did a Kern County in depth on the programs, and we every Gen Info the Friday before the event we push it out. So, and then they do a good job on Facebook.
Mr. Louis?
Fiddler, yes, thank you, Vice Chair Hibbard. I just wanted to clarify, and maybe Mr. Clegg already just explained this. The money that we're proposing here for the improvements along State Route 99, 58, and the West Side Parkway, since those are Caltrans, right? The Caltrans responsibility, but we're putting money in to kind of get them to do what they're supposed to do also?
Thank you, committee member. They are Caltrans rights of way. Caltrans has a certain level of standard, and to go above and beyond that standard, it requires some city investment, but we're also pushing on them and trying to leverage our dollars to have them have a share in costs as well. Yes. But ultimately, really to get a different look and feel that is, significantly different, it's going to require city investment, but we're going to get as much Caltrans investment along with ours as we can.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we weren't in the same situation we were along State Route 99 a couple of years ago when Caltrans wasn't maintaining the weeds and we had that fire out there by CarMax that really affected the business there.
And thank you for pointing that out, because a lot of what we're proposing is hardscapes and rockscapes that will prevent that weed barrier. Our goal is to put 4 to 6 feet of hardscape from the edge of travel way or the edge of the shoulder up the embankment to gain that distance between the roadway and the landscaping. So it keeps the cars from veering off into the landscaping, damaging landscaping, but it also helps with the maintenance efforts in the future going on forward. Our crews, we actually partner with Caltrans through our Bakersfield Freeway Litter Program. It's hard for them to get too close to the edge of travel way because of the traffic. So if we can pull them up the embankment a little bit, provides them a little bit of safety, it helps keep the materials off the edge of the roadway. They can sweep it a little bit easier or blow it a little bit easier with their equipment to get it down that first 4 feet, and then protects the people maintaining up higher.
Mr. Tobias.
Thank you.
Questions?
First thing is I have to leave at about 1:15 here, so and I don't want us to lose quorum. I don't even know if we're going to lose quorum or not, but a couple quick questions. So I agree, our freeways are atrocious and embarrassing, and they've been that way for years. 99 and 58 are just horrid. But I'm also and City Manager Clegg answered part of this about leveraging, but is this the full budget to do the work, or are we leveraging Caltrans money or not? And I would think we should be. This is their right of way, and there has to be some minimal standard they're going to keep. And then if we want to enhance it, then we can discuss that. But I wasn't sure if this was the full budget, basically assuming no Caltrans participation. The state, is swimming in some funding right now, and they're about ready to get more through the infrastructure program if that passes. And I hate to be throwing money at this just because we don't want to figure out how to get the state money to do it. If we could be using other, leveraging other funding. So that's on the freeway projects. There's several of them in there. And then the monument signs, those are so I hate to replace those. Those just went up. They're not very old. And I know it's not a big ticket item, but gosh, it's like, they're not bad looking.
This is, it's more of a we're not replacing them. It's more of doing a plaster overlay on top of it with it, adding the new layer, a new logo.
And should we do the logo, or should we do something that's nice but not have the logo? Because every time we change a logo, it's like, yeah.
That's where we're at now. Yeah.
Anyways, I mean, there's ways to look at nice. You don't maybe have to put the logo. But anyways, those were my comments. Thanks.
Committee?
Question actually for Mr. Clegg also. I understand that the city is in a position to receive very shortly the first half of $96 million from the federal government for various projects. Can any of that be used for these type of things and rather than use measure in money for these type of things?
Thank you, Committee Member Rowland. And for the rest of the committee, we have some high-level guidelines from the federal government, but the detailed guidelines have yet to be provided to the city on how we can spend those funds. There are 4 key buckets in which they can be spent. Capital projects are possible if they meet certain criteria, but we'll have to take a look at each of those. One of the, and again, this is part of that challenge of seeing a smaller portion of a much larger budget, particularly when you add, it's going to be $48 million over in each of 2 years. And so $48 million this year, $48 million next year. Those funds have to be spent between now and 2024. So they actually are not limited to one fiscal year basis. Just to signal to this group, of course, this is something the city council has not weighed in on. This is something that the city council would have to provide some guidance and ultimate vote on. But as we're thinking about these funds, I see them in 3 large buckets. The $48 million. One, they are intended for business assistance to help with economic recovery coming out of the pandemic. That is one of the criteria for the federal government. And I think that's well warranted with where we're at today. Another bucket are these capital projects. These infrastructure projects have some, again, we'll have to see what the specific criteria are, but they are trying to promote infrastructure. And then to me, the third piece is really about that revitalization and about economic development. So we intend to have significant funding to put towards big projects that will be those game changers for our diversifying our economy and doing that in a way that impacts the city broadly in all areas of the city, including in East Bakersfield, seeing significant investment from those American Rescue Plan Act funds.
The questions from the committee? Mr. Prince, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. The only question I did have was in regards to the monuments that were mentioned coming into the city. Was there one mentioning coming into Bakersfield on 58 from the east going west? I know we had them both at the north end and the south end of 99.
I didn't quite hear this whole question.
In the entry treatment or the entry sign, was there anything planned in this budget for Highway 58 that would mirror or match what's on 99, both north and south?
Not at this point. We have in the past identified a potential location for a site on the east side of town. Very far out on the eastern limit. We were working with a farm owner as a possibility of placing a sign on their property. We did not propose it at this time, but we do plan on looking for it in the future to add a sign out at that location.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the east side of town is included in a part of the beautification as well. I think that's something that should be highly considered. Other than that, I have no other questions.
I have one question. With the added staff, was it looked at as far as outsourcing versus hiring in and the pros and cons of each alternative?
Yes, so for our engineer 3 position, that primarily oversees consultants. So it is basically facilitating outsourcing of design work. We do have to have that position to oversee to make sure that the consultants are using guidelines, city guidelines, standards, federal guidelines and standards. And this even going out to submitting RFQs for requests for qualifications and proposals for consultants. So it is it does facilitate the use of outside consultants. Typically, you would see if we brought in a full design squad, you would see more like a draftsman, an engineer 1 type of operation. So this one is solely trying to facilitate more of our consultant activity, which is focused on the PSVS projects only.
Staff, has that also been analyzed to look at we have a lot of great contractors in town, and anytime I see us hiring maintenance people that have a long-term tail on it with the benefits and the retirements, I'm like, are we sure we want to bite that off?
Yeah, I mean, there is a long time tear, but the short-term cost associated with a contractor and going through the efforts of having to design the project, to put it out to bid, to construct it, those are significant costs in itself. And it could add on additional needs for resources, whether it's a supervisor to oversee the work being done, or even a design engineer or a tech to create some plans for us to put out to bid, to issue to those contractors.
And if I could just add a couple other elements of the analysis, it's kind of that balance where you find the tipping point of projects that are big versus small. And so the maintenance workers do a lot of those smaller projects that are kind of time intensive to do a full public procurement on, whereas we're able to contract out a lot of the other work that's in that mid, and larger tiers. So this is, we have done that analysis and looked kind of where is that tipping point of where it's more efficient in-house versus outside.
And just to go off a little bit more, we do have annual on-calls that we utilize for some of those projects that are a tipping point. We'll have like an annual plumbing contractor or HVAC techs or whatever. So we do keep our staff minimized and utilize those where we can. But the city continues to grow and we continue to have more facilities. We need to have be able to react to certain quickly.
Explanation. It's great. Thank you, Mr. Fiddler.
So with that, Vice Chair, I recommend, just given the hour and folks that have had to depart, we'll forego that last item that was on the agenda. We'll wrap that into next meetings lineup to go over the more of the council goal strategic recommendations, along with the other departments we'll cover in our next meeting.
Great. Any closing comments? Gentlemen, I know that we had some additional public comments based on the time. I think we'd like to have all those come forth at the next meeting. Please bring those up. Also, if you had something that is pertinent to what was done or said today with the presentations we had, possibly send an email to the city staff and we can make sure that it gets disseminated so we can have time to think about and digest those comments. Thank you for your public interest today. And hopefully next time we can cover a little bit more. With that, we'll close the meeting. Thank you.